our way to a nice comfy seat. And feeling into some releasing respiration. Drop into the exhale and that reception of the inhale. Once we establish our seat, maybe we turn our palms up here. Make sure that the spine stays nice and vertical. So there's this farmer who's developed a rigorous set of rules served him quite well over the years. Primary rules of farming are spring is for planting, summer is for growing, autumn is for harvesting. Give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. And then when it feels appropriate, let's squeeze our shoulders up towards our ears and drop the chin down to the sternum. And then just roll your head so that your ears kind of squeeze into those shoulder corners. Eventually we'll bring our head back to neutral. Lift the chin back to neutral. Let's just do a full cervical spine rotation over to the right and to the left. Back to neutral. Let's transition our way to hands and knees tabletop. Take a little bit of spinal movement here. Splay the fingers out nice and wide. Make sure that the fingertips are energetically connected to the mat, and then exhale, that's around the middle of the back, tuck the chin. Oh, inhale, drop the belly, lift the chin. Tailbone. And then return to neutral. And move the hips laterally, so a nice little tailbone sway. And then we'll come back to the middle alignment of the spinal column. And exhale out, around the middle of the back, tuck the chin, tuck the tailbone. Make sure you maintain that fingertip engagement. And then exhale, belly, lift the chin, lift the tailbone. And let's return to neutral, and we'll sink our way back into child's pose. Let the respiration still continue to sink you into this shape as you find your end range of motion. See if you can just use respiration to continue to expand that end range. And then when it feels appropriate, let's let the fingertips grip into the mat in front of us if they're not already there. And we'll pull our way back into tabletop. And then take your hands and move them like 3 to 4 inches forward. So we get a little bit of an angle on this arm structure. And then shift your weight so that you come to the point where the arms are vertical again. So now we have the hips just slightly forward, and lift the chin. And then maybe you even drop the hips a little bit. And then we'll come back into this little shifted tabletop and shift your way back until you feel the hips load. So we take the weight off the hands a little bit here, and we drop into that hip space. And then we'll shift our way forward so that we get to the place where the arms are vertical once again. And then you can lift the chin, and then maybe you even drop the hips. And then we'll come back into our little modified tabletop and then push the hips back. And then we'll shift our way back into tabletop. And let's extend our legs out in front of us for a little staff. And from staff, just reach the arms straight up towards the ceiling, palms facing towards one another, and lift the gaze so you're looking in between the hands. And then drop the arms out to cactus, keep the gaze lifted. And then think about sending the sternum forward with each inhale breath. And then we'll relax the vision field and just drop your way into forward fold. Remember, the knees can bend here. We're taking the pressure off of this shape. This is not about locking out the hamstrings. This is just about finding some expansiveness. And then continually softening into that expansiveness with our respiration. So this farmer who had created these rule sets had some particular dates on which he planted, which he fertilized, and which he harvested. March 1st, seedlings went in. July 4th, duck manure was added to the water, fertilization. September 25th, harvesting, each year, every year. And those dates had always worked. We'll give ourselves just about 15 more seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, we're coming back up into a staff. Let's just make sure we have our props handy. So we have that ball and that blanket or towel close by and handy. Or if you're like me, throw it across the room. And then we're going to head onto our backs. And as you head onto your backs, just allow your body to relax into the neutrality of the mat. Just feeling the spine connect with this neutrality, relax into this neutrality, feeling our breath allow our body to get more and more at ease. And then when it feels appropriate, we're gonna roll straight over onto our bellies. And from here, we're gonna stack our hands and just rest our forehead on those stacked hands, a little crocodile pose. Unless we have some pretty significant discomfort in our lumbar spine, crocodile pose feels relatively benign, relatively passive. But start feeling the extension energy in your lumbar spine. So the hands are stacked, the forehead then is lifted, it's above the sternum. The lumbar has this extension energy starting to build within it. And we are going to use kind of a building of this extension energy. So as you feel your breath, really think about where in the lumbar spine you're feeling the extension the most. One interesting thing about the hard and fast rules that this farmer had developed is in many ways they were communal. People may not have written them down on the calendar the way this particular farmer did, but March 1st was kind of universally thought of as the day or around the day in which seedlings went into the ground. And so the next year, when a hard frost came on March 15th, nearly everyone lost their crops. Give yourself just 30 more seconds here. And then when it feels appropriate, we're going to connect with our blanket prop. And just from a shelf fold, we're going to fold that hot dog style. So we end up with kind of a rectangular shaped blanket or towel. And we're going to tuck that underneath our arms so that we can stack our hands or stack our arms on top of this blanket prop and then release your forehead. We should end up with maybe like somewhere between 3/4 of an inch and 2 inches of additional lift. And we should be able to notice that in the extension energy of the lumbar spine, in the fact that the lumbar is going just a little bit further forward. If it's feeling compressive in the lumbar, first try pushing the crown of the head out towards the space in front of you. And if that doesn't work, then and you're still feeling compressed, especially if you're feeling crampy or musculature contractions, pull the blanket out and just go back to the traditional crocodile pose. The inhale portion of your respiration here is in many ways inherently restricted, but not restrictive. And so we're feeling the front of the torso press into the mat or floor as you inhale. Use the full capacity of your breath to fully inflate the lungs, even with that restriction. Even with that restrictive feeling, because we're not truly restricted, right? We have the capacity to inflate the lungs. And we're going to give ourselves about 40 more seconds here. So I say nearly everyone lost their crop because there was one wise old woman who lived way up in the hills, who was seen putting seedlings in on March 16th, the day after the frost. Kind of rumors spread through the communities. You might expect them to. When it feels appropriate, let's take that prop out from underneath the arms, and we're going to go into a little Sphinx pose. So here we want the elbows to be bent at 90 degrees. We want the palms to be down, and there's more torso elevation, which means there's more extension in the lumbar. If this is feeling compressive, lower the head. If that's not working, then go back down to crocodile pose. So we can be all the way from head lifted, kind of gazing up towards the ceiling or sky space, or you can be forehead nearly hovering off the ground, or you can be arms stacked and forehead resting. The primary goal here is to feel full capacity for respiration in spinal extension, lumbar extension. Pay attention to what's going on at the union between the cervical spine and the thoracic spine. Pay attention to what's going on in the scapula and in the humeral heads. We want to be relaxed across the entirety of the shoulder girdle. And we want expansive sensation throughout the cervical spine. So if having the head lifted is creating compression, even in that extensive compression, think about lowering or neutralizing the cervical spine angle. We're going to give ourselves about 60 more seconds here. Or just relax across the shoulder girdle, relax into that subscapular musculature, relax into your full capacity for respiration. Last 30 seconds here. And then when you're ready, we're going to grab our ball and we're going to take that ball and place it in the middle of the right thigh. And we'll lower our head back down to crocodile pose. And so depending on kind of how the quads are feeling this morning, this may be an intense situation already, depending on the density of your ball as well. But we're going to work to find a little bit of movement in the quad musculature too. So as you exhale, see what it feels like to lift the bottom of the foot towards the ceiling or sky. And then as you inhale, releasing the foot back down. It's an exhale up and an inhale back down. And then relax the foot. Feel the musculature of the quad kind of melt around the ball. And then we're going to reverse our breathing direction. So as you inhale, we'll take the bottom of the foot up. And then we'll exhale on the way down. Inhale up. Exhale down. 2 more times. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. Inhaling up. Exhaling down. And just let the quad musculature melt around the ball prop here. Give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. If it feels appropriate, we can take that ball out and just release. Try to feel that bilateral difference between the right and left quad. Then we're going to press ourselves up to tabletop. We'll extend our legs out in front of us. And from here, let's see what it feels like. Take our right leg and tuck that roughly behind us. If this doesn't feel appropriate for you, and you have a belt, doing this from your belly and capturing the leg gives us some length. If that's not available to you, doing it from your belly and just pulling the heel as close to the glutes is probably the ideal situation. If we're comfortable in this seated space, then we can start to release ourselves back. And you can go all the way to the floor. The goal here is to just have a little engagement in the right quad. So whether that is from your belly, pulling the heel, energizing the heel towards your glutes, whether it is using a belt-like prop, whether it is in a seated space, or whether you're on your back, we want the quad musculature in the right leg be engaged. And then we're just going to ease our way into our breath. Just really soft, fluid breath here. Wherever we are in the cycle, right, or in the variation option wheel, matters not. The only thing that matters is that we can fully respirate and that we can feel the quad engaged. And we'll give ourselves just about 30 more seconds here, a little over 30 seconds. So the rumors started to kind of whirl around this community that primarily the rumors focused on either she was a witch and when it feels appropriate for you, we'll let that leg come out and we'll roll back over onto our bellies. We'll grab our ball and we're headed to side 2. So ball's going to come in the middle of that left quad. Head resting on stacked hands, crocodile pose. Fluidity in the breath. So people either accuse her of being a witch or they accuse her of being lazy. Either she knew the frost was coming, so she waited, or she had just not done her planting yet and just got lucky. And kind of community was 50-50 split on which it was. When it feels appropriate, we're going to start to add some movement. So the exhale takes the foot up, and then the inhale drops. Exhale, foot up. Inhale, drop, and then just let your foot rest there. Let the musculature of the quad melt around the ball. And then when it feels appropriate, let's reverse that respiration. So we'll inhale up and then exhale, drop. Inhale up, exhale, drop, and 2 more times. We'll inhale up, exhale, drop, inhale up, exhale, drop, and just let the musculature melt around the ball prop. Last 20 seconds here. And when it feels appropriate, let's take that ball out from underneath us. Now, if you didn't feel like the right quad made it underneath your body, you can go right to that heel towards the glute position. If that was accessible, we'll press up, find staff, extend our legs out in front of us, and then tuck that left leg behind us. And this may feel like enough here. We get that left quad loaded. If not, we can lower ourselves back. Just kind of feeling where the left quad gets the appropriate amount of activation. And if releasing yourself onto your spine is accessible and it feels like the right thing for you, we can do that as well. Remember here, we want to be able to fully respirate. We want to feel the quad engagement. And that quad engagement should not be a torture chamber. It should be enough engagement so that we feel it's there, but we can be relaxed and at ease. So that year, this old woman was one of the very few local farmers who was able to provide produce for the community. The next year, everyone was a little bit more apprehensive around that March 1st planting date. More or less, everything went in around that time. And so on July 4th, when everyone was adding their duck manure to the plants for fertilization, just like they always had, things were pretty well established. 15 seconds here on the second side. When it feels appropriate, we're going to extend that left leg if we're on our back. If we're anywhere other than on our back, we're going to make our way onto our back. Knees bent. Body at ease. Respiration at ease. And we'll eventually allow the bottoms of the feet to come together and the knees to fall out wide. So while the plants were well established on July 4th, they weren't exactly thriving. It had been an incredibly dry, droughty growing season. And the extra nitrogen from the duck manure, while gentle, turned out to be too much for many of the plants. A lot of the farmers lost what they had been growing. The old woman way up in the hills still had a huge pile of duck manure when the rains came. And after the rains had thoroughly hydrated the soil, she was seen spreading that manure out over her plants. And the rumors in town started to shift more and more towards she was some kind of witch. If you can let that hip girdle really relax here, we're just going to be here for about 30 more seconds. But with that quad musculature just a little bit more pliable than it might have been prior to the start of practice, can you transition that space from the anterior of the legs into that lateral edge, into the hip structure? And can you be more soft, more relaxed into this shape? And then when it feels appropriate, let's bring our knees back to neutral. Let's take our ball and our blanket prop. And from a shelf fold, we're just gonna go hot dog, put the ball in there like a little taco. And then we'll put that ball under the middle of our cervical spine. It can be in the middle, can be at the base of the cervical spine. It can be at the base of the skull. Any of those placements are optimal. Depends on what is optimized for you this morning. I'm not going to be here for too long. Think about 120 seconds here. But really try to relax your neck into this space. Legs can be extended, knees can be bent, bottoms of the feet could be back together, knees out wide if that felt good for you. Try to think about how the weight of your breath is interacting with the weight of the body pressing against that ball. And so for the second year in a row, this old woman was one of a very few who were able to provide her community. The next year, everyone had more or less forgotten about that fear of planting on March 1st. Seedlings went in. Water, rain was pretty traditional that year. So on July 4th, when everyone fertilized, the plants were happy, receptive, and booming. On September 24th, the day before this huge community harvest, a hard frost rolled in. And plants were destroyed, harvests were destroyed, crops were destroyed across the scope of the community. And yet, this old woman was seen with a truckload of produce she had harvested, driving into town on the 25th. At this point, pretty much the entirety of the community was convinced that she was some type of witch. When it feels appropriate for you, we're going to bring our knees back into a bent position if they're not there, so kneecaps point towards the ceiling. Pull the prop out from underneath us and let our head come down to the mat. And then we're going to elevate our hips high enough that we can slide the blanket prop underneath our torso. However, the ball is going to be on the left side of the spinal column. So think about being maybe 2 to 3 inches to the left of the spinal column, maybe 1 to 3 inches to the left of the spinal column, and then just above the ilium, so just above the bony structure of the hips, and into that soft tissue. And then you're just going to release your torso down onto the ball. And then we're going to take from the knees from neutral and just start to wiggle them to the left, maybe like 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and then back to neutral. And so you're just exhaling the knees towards the left and then back towards neutral. As the knees shift, you should feel a little increased pressure from that ball. Just pushing into the pressure of the ball and then relaxing to neutral. Try to work a little space from the hips into the lumbar. And so just about everyone in this community was convinced that this woman was a witch, but there was one person who wasn't. The very first farmer, the one with the hard and fast rules, who always planted seedlings on March 1st, fertilized on July 4th, and harvested on September 25th. Because one of his hard and fast rules was that there was no such thing as witches. And so he got into his truck and he drove to this old woman's house, figure out what was going on. Last 30 seconds here on this first side. When it feels appropriate for you, we're going to bring our knees back to neutral. And we're going to move the prop, so lift the belt line high enough to move the prop over to the second side. So it's just off the spinal column on the right side, just off the ilium, so that the ball is pressing into that lumbar musculature. And then settling into that before we start that knee movement to the second side. So it's an exhale, knee shift to the right. We feel the pressure of the ball increase and then relax back to neutral. Just into the pressure and then relaxing back. should feel like turning on the tension of that quadris laborum musculature and then relaxing into space. And it should feel like it is giving space as we come back to neutral. So he drives up to her house, and as he's pulling in, he's looking around and he sees that it's clear she's not lazy. Her farm looks like everyone else's farm, with lots and lots of signs of hard labor, laborious projects, finished, unfinished, given up on, various states of completion. And so he gets out of his truck and he sees this old woman carrying some trays, walks up to talk to her. They don't know each other well. And he starts the conversation relatively awkwardly, saying, you're the only one in this whole area to have crops for the last 3 years. How the heck are you doing it? She kind of chuckles and says, man, I was wondering when you guys would come to ask this. At this point, he's starting to think, uh-oh, maybe this is some type of supernatural thing. Last 30 seconds here. And so he says, well, I'm here. So why don't you start talking? How about 3 years ago? Why don't we start there? When it feels appropriate, knees come back to neutral. Lift yourself high enough to slide the prop out from underneath you. Release your tailbone back to the mat. Let the tailbone release into neutrality. Feel how that whole sacral bowl sits differently against the mat, and then maybe add a little lateral sway to the knees. Kind of trying to find your way back into a little normalcy there. Ask yourself if there's any additional movement that you might need or benefit from. And then eventually, we're just going to relax our way into stillness and into a shape where we can appreciate some Shavasana. So this man continues, and it says, 3 years ago, how did you know not to plant on the 1st of March? And she kind of looks at him confused, or with an expression that he takes as confusion. He kind of shakes it off and says, okay, 2 years ago, how'd you know not to fertilize on the 4th? She gives kind of the same expression. He says, okay, well, this year, how did you get a harvest when we had the freeze on the 24th? At ease here, in stillness here, completely relaxed here. He's an old woman speaks. 3 years ago, I did plan to first. The man shakes his head and he says, well, then how did I see you putting seedlings in on the 15th? He said, well, because I had extras in case something went wrong. Okay, that makes sense. And 2 years ago, why didn't your crops die when you fertilized? I said, well, some of my crops did die because I fertilized them on July 4th. Many of my crops didn't because I didn't fertilize them on them. We had a dry summer that year, you may remember. And I didn't know fertilizing would make things go wrong. This year, the reason I have a truckload of harvest is because I harvest some early. And I did that because if I waited, I didn't know if something might go wrong. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes, into our wrists and our ankles, elbows and our knees. Conversation was quite frightening, this man. To our shoulders and our hips, movement throughout the spine, the head, the neck, the jaw, the eye. Eventually, your entire body will move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition into a seat. In the seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid. Close. You realize this woman wasn't a witch. She was just prepared. For your next inhale, bring your hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself the world can only betray those who expect it to happen the way they want it to. And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice, for being you. Namaste.